Hello, students. Very good evening to all of you. Jyoti, Aishwarya, Kavita, Krishnamurti, Rishi. Just students, confirm quickly. All of you, audio, video, all fine, students. Please confirm, students, just quickly. Krishna, perfect, students. So, students, this is our second session on the practice batch. अब जो students हिंदी के लिए जो सोच रहे हैं कि आईडीटी का प्रैक्टिस बैच हिंदी में है कि नहीं, तो स्टूडेंट्स नीचे मैंने एक आप लोगों को दिया है डिस्क्रिप्शन बॉक्स में दिस पर्टिकुलर नंबर. आप मुझे व्हाट्सअप करें द फर्स्ट नंबर विच आई हैव गिवन टू यू, और उसमें मैं आप लोग को हिंदी का जो एक अलग से प्रैक्टिस बैच चल रहा है, हिंदी प्रैक्टिस बैच स्टूडेंट्स इज इन द मॉर्निंग at 7:30 a.m. At night we are doing the English practice. There are two batches, one in English, another is in Hindi. Those who want to join for English primary, though, and you not yet joined, so in the description box, students, those particular numbers has been given to you. Do WhatsApp in that number to add you in that Telegram channel. तो आपको क्या है वो Telegram channel में add करवा दिया जाएगा और फिर आप उस हिसाब से वो lectures के link वो देख सकते हो. And just ensure, students, just to share this thing with all your colleagues and your friends who are there primarily, and they can take this benefit of this important practice batch that we are doing it for all of you for November 24 attempt. Abhin, Sania. So, students, today we will be initiating the supply topic. Now, one important observation, students, which is there, many students are asking one query which was there, sir, what about this budget? This budget, the changes that has happened, whether it is being applicable for for November 24 attempt, to that the answer is no. So don't worry on that. November 24 attempt, this budget will have no impact so far as your direct tax and indirect tax is concerned. However, in the Telegram channel, students, tomorrow or so, I'll just give you one important input about a possible question that could be targeted for your November 24 attempt based on this budget. What is that, students? I'll just put across that discussion in the Telegram channel itself. Tomorrow itself in the morning, I'll just do it so that you are aware of the kind of the focus area that you have to put across. Those things you will be in a position to deal it properly. Now, students, we yesterday in the first class that we have discussed, we introduced the basic provision in this regard. And as you all are aware, students, the basic provision that we have discussed requires, as you would have noticed, that there are certain important points that we have covered in the yesterday's lecture. The most important area, students, was about that constitutional amendments. These constitutional changes which has happened so far as the GST law is concerned, those changes, students, you are supposed to know about it, and there is absolutely no escape. You cannot escape from that. You need to know about those constitutional changes that has happened, students, for sure. So that is point number one, that you should just bear this particular thing in mind. This point that we have covered in that constitutional provision, students, I took you through to article number 246A. And in that article number 246A, that is the constitutional entry which empowers both the center as well as the state to frame the law relating to the supply of goods and services. That is the GST law. However, the same article 246A provides an exclusive power. Exclusive power to whom? To the center for making the law for IGST. So that is an exclusive power, students, in this context. At the same time, we have seen that article 246A also tells you that 5 petroleum product, on that the levy shall be postponed depending upon the recommendation of the GST Council. Audio is low. Deepika is saying audio is low. Just confirm, students, once, or Deepika, you just see from your end if you need to increase the volume. Students, just confirm this particular thing, audio particular part and all. So if all this is good, we can just try to take it further quickly. Every one of you, students. Aishwarya. Audio is fine. Neeraj. Jyoti. So Deepika, just check at your end. You need to just increase the volume, and that is primarily how the things would be. Now, this 5 goods that we have discussed, students, I have told you that the GST on that, the levy would be postponed for the future dates. What would be? That would be told by the GST Council. And the next one, students, that we have captured was this article number 36612A. In that article 36612A, you have seen what? That alcoholic liquor for human consumption, students, is completely out of the game of as far as the GST is concerned. So when you have to write, these are the levy part. So there will never be levy so far as alcoholic liquor for human consumption is concerned, and so far as the 5 petroleum product is concerned, the levy presently is not there, but in the future it could be introduced based on the recommendation of the GST Council. That is what was our conclusion yesterday. And I have introduced some case study, and in that case study, students, you would have seen in the yesterday's first class, and what was that? On the tobacco and tobacco products. What is the scenario today? What is the scenario today for a tobacco and tobacco product? We have got the GST applicable, yes. Do we have also the old excise duty applicable for this? Again, the answer is yes. Do we have VAT applicable for the sale of tobacco product? No. Why? Because any case GST is getting applicable. So therefore, there is no question of VAT being imposed on the supply of tobacco and tobacco product. So it is only the excise duty of the old regime that is continued for point number 1, tobacco and tobacco product, and point number 2, that 5 petroleum products. That 5 petroleum product, students, only on those 2 categories the old regime of excise law continues. And so far as the alcoholic liquor for human consumption is concerned, the state excise duty is what will be charged, and on the supply of the alcoholic liquor of human consumption, there will not be a GST on that supply, but will there be a VAT on that supply? Answer is yes. The old regime of VAT continues on that alcoholic liquor for human consumption. Up till here, students, all good? Tell me, students, quickly. Fine, students. Perfect. Can we then proceed now, students, on the next and the important the case study, students? I've already shared with you. We have discussed those case studies as well. On that note, are you all set for Article 279A? And I told you yesterday that this Article 279A, please be careful to do it thoroughly. On the day of the examination, on the last month, this article needs to be considered, cannot be ignored. Have you taken the note of it, students? And I am assuming, students, you all are maintaining a separate notebook, because all the charts which I am going to prepare for you, students, see, GST, I am telling you one thing, students, you would have noticed, you do n number of reading of the GST law, the things doesn't get written in your head. Do you agree? N number of reading of GST law, that things doesn't get what? It doesn't get registered. So how do you register? You can understand it, but it doesn't get registered. So how to understand it? There are 3 particular ways to remember it. One, primarily try to write and try to simplify through charts, but do it through your own writing. So that simplification, that registration has to be there. That imprint has to be there in your mind, primarily. And if even then, second is what? After you have done those chart wise capturing of the summary on your own, then obviously I'm going to facilitate you. We are doing in the class, so you're going to capture it. The second point, students, is the interlinking with various situations. Various situations you should keep on interlinking. That is the second best approach to register the GST law. And the third one, students, is the application. The third one, students, is what? Is the application. Application through practical problem. That is what we are also going to do in our lectures. That is a 3-set approach. And the fourth one, even if after doing this 3, it doesn't get registered, what is the fourth approach? Do tattoo of the GST law across all over your body. In that scenario, that is the best particular approach, the fourth approach. If the first 3 fails, the fourth will help you survive. And the fourth one is tattoo entire law of GST on your body. That is the best particular thing. That is the fourth approach, students, which I have told you, a secret approach, isn't it? Let's then start with this article 279A, students. 279A, Goods and Service Tax Council. So that GST Council, students, is something which is coming from 279A. That formation of that council is through this article. Now it empowers what, students? Empowers president to constitute a joint forum of the center and state, namely GST Council. That is fine. President constituted on this date. Date is not important for it. The GST Council consists of, now this is important, consists of Union Finance Minister, that is the chairperson, Union Minister of State in charge. So in that center, there is a finance minister and there is a minister of state for finance. So that is a two category. So therefore, this is one. So center has got two-person representation, and thereafter, herein, in this case, for the state. What about the state, students? For the state, all the finance minister or any minister nominated by the state government. So the representation is through the finance minister so far as the state is concerned. How many in that case, students? You have got 28 state. We all know yesterday. We have discussed that point, students, in this regard. Students are still asking about the fact that, about the link. I think that many of the students are not even aware of that fact that I have already added them in the Telegram channel. And personally, in fact, they are messaging even after adding, they are asking me about the link and all. Anyways, I'll give it to you, but I hope that at least people are aware of the fact that there is this particular link which is existing, or maybe there are so many particular channels that you have lost in that entire, where the channel is there, this channel has got into it. So at least keep an eye on this one, because unnecessarily this is the point which I'm getting a message still about the fact that where is the link of the lecture. Anyways, 28 state, students, plus 3 union territory with legislature. So in all, how many state finance minister? 31. That UT which doesn't have state legislature, that UT will not be represented by anyone. So that center itself is the one which is representing them. So that is 31. In that case would be the category, plus 2 from the center. So that plus 2 is from the center, probably in that particular context, and this is what it is in this regard. This is what it is in this regard, students. So therefore, which we will speak about it herein. In this regard, students, that is how the things has to be considered. Now coming on this particular part. Now this is also equally important over here, students. Please be careful on this particular part. The GST Council shall make recommendation. This is important, students. What they do, they don't make a law, but they recommend. And based on their recommendation, CGST Act, SGST Act, or in that case, gets those kind of an amendment. So the GST Council shall make the recommendation to the union and the state on the taxes, cess, surcharge levied. Students, if you remember, there is a GST compensation cess which was there. After this concept, I'll just take you through to the GST compensation cess. In fact, last year was a 2022 last. It was the last year itself. After that, there was no compensation given, but now there was extension of that cess also. And all we are aware that the GST compensation cess has been extended. Who recommended for the extension? The council has recommended for the extension. So therefore, it is through this GST Council that the extension has been granted. Thereafter, all the exemption that you see, which is introduced, which is removed, which is reduced, as the case may be, those exemptions again is because of those recommendation given by the GST Council. Model GST law, that is fine. Principle of levy. Now this apportionment of GST levy, now this is an important one, students. This is an important one. Apportionment of the GST levied on the supplies in the course of interstate trade or commerce. This is an important one, students. And this we will discuss this particular part. Let's finish it off. Apportionment of GST levied on the supplies in the course of the interstate trade or commerce. Now this is section 17. Students, we will discuss this particular point in this context. So apportionment of GST levied on the supplies in the course of interstate trade or commerce, and the principles that govern the place of supply, rates of taxes, special provision. Now this is important, students, in this case. So rates of taxes, place of supply, principle relating to place of supply. And the last one, students, happens to be, what is the last one, students, in this context? Special provision with respect to the special category states. Special provision relating to the special category state, students. Special provision relating to the special category state. Just a second. Just a second. So now, students, over here, if you see, so now if you see, students, over here, as you can see in this context, special provision relate with respect to the special category state. Students, now please tell me how many special category states that you all are aware of in this context. This is an important one, students. Special category states. So in all, there are 11 special category states, students, which you all are aware. 11 special category states, students, in all. How many are there? Special category state. This is such an important thing. And why I'm telling you it is such an important thing? Because at different places, in different places, the special category states also keeps changing. In different places, the special category states also keeps changing, and that's the reason why this concept holds of utmost importance. So special category state, students, if you see, in all there are total 11. How many are there? It is 11. Please do take a note of it, students, this particular concept. Now obviously this is coming out of the GST committee, GST Council's recommendation, because that is what is covered within the scope of Article 279A. Is this covered within the scope of Article 279A, that they can recommend as to, or which state would be considered as special category state? Is that within their scope under Article 279A? Answer is yes. Now the question therefore arises in this case is, what are those 11 category, students? AP, in this case Arunachal Pradesh, students, not Andhra Pradesh, that is Arunachal Pradesh. So first category, students, is those 8 northeastern region. The first category, students, just remember in this particular way, that 8 northeast region, students, as you all are aware, AP, that is Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Manipur, in this particular context. Thereafter Mizoram, Sikkim, Tripura, Nagaland, in this context. So these are the 8. Meghalaya. Okay, that is the first category. Now, apart from that, so 8 from northeast. Then what is the next one, students? Then there is a 9th is J&K, 10th is Himachal Pradesh, HP is Himachal Pradesh, and the last one, students, is Uttarakhand. Uttarakhand. The last one, students, is Uttarakhand, students. Now, first one, AP. AP is not Andhra Pradesh. AP is Arunachal Pradesh. Assam, Manipur, Mizoram, Sikkim, Tripura, Nagaland, Meghalaya. That is 8 northeast region. J&K, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand. Now, so therefore these are the special category states. Now, special provision can be recommended by GST Council in respect of these special category state. Special provision can be recommended by the GST Council in respect of these special category states. Now, question therefore arises, what is that special provision? Any special provision, students, that you people can answer to me? That, sir, this was a special provision where we have seen that special category state was mentioned, isn't it? Any of the special category states that you can recall. What was that, student? Tell me quickly. Jyoti, Tulsi, the most popular one. You have already spoken about it. Most popular one. That is a point. Apart from that, in this particular context, student. Indeed. So let's have a look. I'll just put across example number 1. Registration. Registration, students. Registration. If you talk about it, under section 22, Kavita, Rishi, Aishwarya, Prasanna, Assam. No, Assam is there, Prasanna. In northeast, Assam definitely is there. First of all, what we have defined? We have defined the 11 special category states which has been notified. Okay, so these are the one. Now in that context, students, the registration under section 22, which has been there in this regard. So here, students, that you may be aware of it. That you may be aware of it, students. Aggregate turnover for others, registration is compulsory if the aggregate turnover, students, exceed rupees 20 lakhs. Aggregate turnover, students, exceed rupees 20 lakhs. Whereas in the context of the special category state, the aggregate turnover, students, should exceed how much? 10 lakhs. Aggregate turnover, students, should exceed 10 lakhs so as to make them liable to register. So when they will become liable to register, students, be careful, what I'm saying. When they will become liable to register, the wordings are very important. Use the wording. Be careful. So this will make them liable to register under section 22. Liable to register under section 22 based on the turnover threshold. Use this phrase. Which phrase? Liable to register under section 22. First, the general one is aggregate turnover exceed rupees 20 lakhs, and the second category is aggregate turnover exceed rupees 10 lakhs. Now you tell me, students, in this case, this is for special category states, the 10 lakh threshold. This is for the special category states. The threshold of 10 lakhs is for the special category state. Is it for all the 11 special category states? All that 11 notified special category state, that the threshold of 10 lakhs, will it be made applicable for all the 11? Is that the case? Tell me in this case. Answer is, students, no. Only for 4 particular category, only for 4 states that the 10 lakh limit is applicable. And which are those 4 category, students? Only 4 special category state. SCS, students. I'm just using the short form. You can also use the word SCS. Only 4 special category. And which are those 4 special category? One is Nagaland. Another is, students, in this context, Manipur. The next one is Tripura, Aveen. And the last one happens to be Mizoram. Can you see this? Mizoram, students. So Nagaland, Manipur, Tripura and Mizoram. Is that point clear to all of you? So only 4. Although 11 is notified as a special category state, but for the purpose of turnover based registration, for which a reduced limit of 10 lakhs has been specified, that is applicable only in respect of the 4 states. That is applicable only in respect of that 4 states. Although 11 special states are being notified, however, for the purpose of turnover based registration of a reduced limit of 10 lakhs, only 4 states are notified in that list of 11. Only 4 states are notified in that list of 11. These 4 states are Nagaland, Manipur, Tripura, Mizoram. Okay, and that is what it is. So if you talk about Assam, if you talk about Arunachal Pradesh, J&K, Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, Meghalaya, for all these particular states, that 20 lakhs limit is what would be made applicable. The 20 lakhs limit is what would be made applicable even if these states are special category states. But for them, the reduced turnover of 10 lakhs is not applicable. Why? Why it is not applicable? GST Council. GST Council has recommended that the special provision of reduced turnover for registration would be applicable in the list of 11. In that list of 11, only to 4 special states. So who has recommended that this reduced turnover for registration should be made applicable only to 4 special category states? That recommendation has been given by GST Council. That recommendation has been given by whom? By GST Council. Is that point clear to all of you students? Tell me, if that be the case, students. All of you students are clear about it? Everyone? Neeraj? Yeah, I am coming to the next one. Prasanna, just wait for it. Now, students, comes the point number 2. Point number 2. I'll give you one more example. So, registration example is clear to all of you. Now, we go to the second example. And the second example, students, is about the composition levy. The second example, students, is about the composition levy under section 10(1). Composition levy under section 10(1). So, the composition levy under section 10(1), students, in this particular context. What is this composition levy under section 10(1) is what now we are going to discuss in this regard. So, composition levy, students, you all are aware that there is a turnover limit of 1.5 crores. Up to that, I have an option that I could opt to pay not as per the normal charge, but as per the composition levy. So the normal charge which is given to us on the aggregate value or on the turnover, apply the normal rate of GST. Instead of that, I might opt for a composition levy scheme as per which on my value a much reduced rate of GST is what would be made applicable. A much reduced rate of GST is what is getting applicable on my value. That is what the composition scheme is all about. So that composition scheme, students, can be exercised up to a turnover, aggregate turnover, students, up to the aggregate turnover of 1.5 crores. Up to the aggregate turnover of 1.5 crores in this context. However, there is a reduce, which means that, what does it mean? That up to 1.5 crores of the aggregate turnover, I will continue to pay. I have the option, pay the GST as per the reduced rate. And the turnover in excess of 1.5 crores, I will then be required to pay GST as per the normal rates. Okay. However, there is a reduced turnover limit of 75 lakhs. There is a reduced turnover limit up to rupees 75 lakhs. So this aggregate turnover up to 1.5 crores. And here aggregate turnover up to 75 lakhs. Aggregate turnover up to rupees 75 lakhs. Now students, this 75 lakhs, my question therefore to all of you is, this 75 lakhs is applicable to whom in this regard? So in that category, out of the 11 special category state, 11 SCS which has been given to you, in that 11 SCS minus what? Minus in this context students. In that 11 students minus 3 particular states. Which are the 3 states? Minus the 3 states, which is Assam, Himachal Pradesh and J&K. Himachal Pradesh and J&K. You reduce this 3. So therefore, how much is remaining students? 8. 8 SCS. There are 8 SCS which is left. To whom? There are 8 SCS students which is left. To whom? This aggregate turnover. To whom this aggregate turnover students up to rupees 75 lakhs is what is applicable. Is that point clear to all of you? Is that point clear to all of you? Now see here, who has recommended this? Again the GST Council has recommended that the reduced turnover to exercise the option of composition levy, the reduced turnover of 75 lakhs to exercise the option of composition levy should be made applicable only to 8 special category state, although the total list is of 11, but only to 8, that the reduced turnover of up to rupees 75 lakhs for the purpose of composition levy would be made applicable. So only 8 over here. Can you see that? So this is what exactly is the point students. That is what primarily you are finding it out over here. I hope that every one of you are clear with this. Each one of you students. If that be the case students, can you see the difference? Now I have deliberately introduced this turnover because this is massive area where the students get confused. Why? Because in the first module, in your first chapter, you read 11 state. Then suddenly in some other chapter, you are reading what? Only 4 state. Then some other chapter students, you are reading what? 8 states. So this is a high confusion area. And also there are some more important area where the confusion lies. As we proceed further students, I'm going to make a summary out of it. But please take a note of these things, so that these area of confusions are captured at the initial stage itself, so that whenever this topic comes now, it will become very easier for us to revise it. I hope that every one of you are clear with this one now. So shall we proceed students now? You have copied this particular part. So now students, quickly running through the same. Let's wrap it up. GST Council shall recommend the date on which the goods and the GST on petroleum. Okay, we know na 5 petrol product. Which notified date from which the GST would be made applicable, that would be recommended by the GST Council. Now friends, this is one thing, you just be careful about it. This is a highly an MCQ based question that could be targeted over here. Highly an MCQ based question. And what is that? 1/2 of the total number of the members shall constitute the quorum of the meetings. 1/2 of the total number of members shall constitute the quorum of the meeting. So total quorum should be 1/2 of the total. How many total I have already told you in this case. Every decision students in this regard. Every decision in the GST Council shall be taken at a meeting by majority of not less than 3/4 of the weighted votes of the member present and the voting. Just take a very important scenario. Now presently students, here in the center we have got NDA government. And we say, for example, in the majority of states in India, we have got the opposition government. Now, if that is the kind of formation of GST Council, and you just imagine that center only 2 people, and the total state finance minister, the maximum state finance minister are from the opposition party. So there is again high chances are there, center only 2, and all the maximum is opposition parties. So you can just say that GST is run by an opposition party, and therefore there is no democracy in that. So that is the reason why, students, what these people have done, with center having two, with center students having two in this context, two members, this two members from in the center, be careful, students, this two member in the center, which is the finance minister and the minister of state finance, the two from center, their percentage of voting, students, is 33.33%. How much their percentage is? 33.33%. And the balance 31 states. How come 31 states? 28 plus 3. The balance 31 state is having the balance 67 point, how much? 66.67%. This is what it is. Otherwise, the opposition will run the GST at the end of the day. Whereas in the center, the government of the day is a ruling party, and it is the opposition which is running the GST. That cannot happen. And that is the reason why, students, that two members from the center, they have the vote weightage of 33.33, and the remaining 31 is 66.67. This is only for the MCQ purpose that we are dealing with it, students. Only for MCQ purpose, nothing for it now. If that is the case, students, the last particular concept, and this is an important one, students. One of the main features, students, of the GST Council is to recommend what? Recommend, students, the apportionment of GST, the apportionment of GST levied on the supply in the course of interstate trade and commerce. Interstate trade and commerce. How the GST will get apportioned. This is section number 17 of IGST Act. Very important section. Section 17 of the IGST Act. Now, to understand this section 17, a case study, I will introduce it. I request to all of you to ensure to capture this particular case study as well. So, section 17 of the apportionment. 17 of the apportionment of the IGST. So, this is for the apportionment, students. Apportionment of IGST. IGST on interstate. So, IGST is on interstate, no? Interstate supply. IGST, students, would be on the interstate supply. So, this particular apportionment, students, that you are reading right now is towards this particular part. So, interstate supply. Consider this example now, students, all of you. Every one of you will consider this example in this context. Here in, students, here is Karnataka. In this context, so there is a supply that has happened of, say, between dealer 1 to dealer 2. Both were from Karnataka. And then from dealer 2, it goes to a consumer, which is based in, so this is B2B. B2B supply. And the interstate say was B2C. So this has happened to the customer primarily where in Tamil Nadu. Okay. So one, it went to Karnataka, and thereafter it is going to Tamil Nadu. Fine, students. Now how it works in this context. So students, over here, if you see it very carefully in this context. So here in this scenario, students, say basic selling price, the invoice that has been raised by him is, say, 10,000. And thereafter, say CGST. Obviously, this is an intrastate in that context. So therefore, this is 900. And then SGST. So this is also 9%. So accordingly, 900. So that is what the total invoice value would be, 11,800. Okay, this is the context. Now, here D2 will also raise an invoice. So the D2 invoice would be, say, basic selling price, students, in this regard is say 20,000. Okay, and thereafter here he will impose IGST. IGST rate of 18%. 18% means 3,600 in this context. Therefore, the total amount is 23,600. This is the IGST. Fine. So supply 1, which is the case, this is first supply and second supply in this context. All of you have copied on this one? Now, if you all have copied on this one, students, what you can really go through from this one, please be careful on this particular aspect, students. So over here, students, you can see that as far as the first supply is concerned, can we say, so far as the first supply is concerned, that here the Karnataka government is getting a GST of 900. Central government is getting the GST of 900 from the first supply. 900 to the Karnataka government and 900 to the central government from the first supply. Okay. Yesterday I told you, students, GST is what? Consumption based tax. Where therefore the consumption is taking place, where the goods are getting consumed, is getting consumed in Tamil Nadu. So finally, which state will have the right to retain that particular GST amount? Which state will have the right to retain its share of GST amount? Which state will have the right to retain its share of GST amount? Which state? Definitely it has to be the state of Tamil Nadu. It's the state of Tamil Nadu which will have the right to retain what? Its share of the GST amount. Do you all agree to this one, students? Every one of you? That exactly is the point. So therefore, in this particular case, now what happens? In this context, be careful. Now, in this scenario, students, just pay attention what I'm doing over here. Be careful. Now, consider this one, students, now. Be careful over here. Now, this particular part, students, herein, they are using 900 to pay what? IGST. 900 and 900, students, is what has been used to pay the IGST in that context. And balance IGST which has been paid, 1800, is been paid in cash. Balance has been paid in cash. That is how the IGST has been discharged. Discharged by whom? By D2. D2 has to discharge IGST. So how D2 has discharged IGST? From the previous supply, he has got CGST credit and SGST credit. So CGST credit and SGST credit has been used to pay off its output liability of GST. It has been used to pay off its output liability of IGST. Now many students are asking, or some of the students are asking, sir, whether CGST and SGST credit, can that be used to pay off IGST output liability? If you are not aware of it, students, the very next particular chart I'm going to do this, so that you know at the very start of the lecture that which particular credit could be used for which liability on your output supply. So that is the next chart that I'm going to introduce it. Okay, but for the time being, in this context, CGST and SGST from the previous supply, I am taking the credit, and that credit I am using to pay off my IGST liability. But obviously, my IGST liability is 3,600, whereas my credit is only 1,800. So the balance 1,800 of IGST, am I supposed to pay it in cash? The balance 1,800 of the IGST, am I supposed to pay it in cash? And the answer is yes. So what has happened, students? Please be careful in this context. Herein, in this context, here the liability of IGST, to whom it will go? It will go to the central government. In this context, so 3,600 is the liability. Now, in that case, the CGST has been used to the extent of 900 for this one. SGST, which SGST? SGST of Karnataka has been used for 900 for this, doing this one. And that being the scenario, the balance 1,800 has been deposited through cash. The balance 1,800 has been deposited through cash. Now what will happen, students? As you can see from this particular table, the CGST of 900 and the SGST of 900 from Karnataka, that has to be deposited in the account of IGST, because The CGST and the SGST primarily has been levied in the previous supply, which is incorrect. And therefore, why it is incorrect to that extent? Because it is a consumption based tax. So because it's a consumption based tax, it is the Tamil Nadu government which is going to retain the share of the GST. So that is the reason why from the previous supply, the Karnataka government, from the previous supply, students, the Karnataka government will deposit 900 to the IGST account. The central government 900 rupees again will be deposited to the IGST account. So with that, this one becomes how much? 0. This will become 0. So therefore, this becomes 0 over here. And now you find that total IGST after this in the IGST account, students, IGST account would be how much? 3,600. So the amount paid, primarily how the amount has been paid. So amount paid, students, amount paid through transfer. So transfer will take place. TGST 900 is getting transferred. SGST Karnataka primarily 900 is getting transferred, and there is a cash transfer by D2 in this context. D2 has paid the cash. No? So who is transferring in this context in the IGST account? TGST of 900. SGST, Karnataka government is transferring 900 to the IGST account, and there is a cash payment that has been made by D2 of 1800. So now we have got 3,600 which is there in this context. Now this 3,600 of this will has to be apportioned, students. So this will be apportionment would be there, and that is what we are talking about it. The apportionment primarily in this context that will take place, and this apportionment as per section 17 will go to whom in this regard. So now the central government will be getting from 3,600, 50% share will go to the central government. 50% will go to the central government. Central government will get 1,800, and the state government, which state government? The state government of Tamil Nadu, primarily in this context, they will get 800, 1,800. This is how, students, the things will work. Section 17. Therefore, the previous supply of the same goods on which the GST was charged, the respective government will transfer, students, will transfer the GST collected from the previous supply. The previous particular supply which has happened, in that context, the respective government will transfer the GST collected in the previous supply. So therefore, the central government and the state government, in both these cases, has transferred what they have collected in the previous supply. Why they are transferring it? Because the consumption took place interstate in the other state. So that is the reason why the transfer has taken place. So therefore, the GST after transfer from the government was 1,800, plus there is a cash deposit made by the dealer which has done the interstate sale. So the cash deposit of 1,800 will also add on to my IGST account, so that the total IGST after all this transfer and payment, becomes 3,600, and that is what will be apportioned now. How it apportioned? 50% will go to the central, 50%, balance 50% will go to that state where the consumption has taken place. Is that point clear to all of you? Where the consumption has taken place. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. Every one of you. So therefore, students, in this regard, this is all the things has to be considered. So students, we are done with this particular proposition completely in this context. So this is what is the fine analysis of Article 279A, students. You will ensure to revise this 279A, and I told you at different point of time you will keep on revising. So this 279A, students, finally this 279A, and then thereafter this 3 case study which I told you, students, and then thereafter, students, the 3 case studies. Yesterday we did the first class, we did 3 case studies, isn't it, on those different products, the case study that we did. So this 3 case study, students, will have to also be undertaken by all of you. With that, now, students, we come down to the next one, student, that many students are asking, sir, the utilization of ITC, how you are utilizing the ITC. So students, there is this rule 88A in this context of the manner in which the ITC needs to be utilized. Just let's have a look, be very careful on this particular part, students. Students, over here All of you will make this table, students, even though you may be aware of it. Many students are saying, sir, I am aware of this utilization manner. Still, you will copy down this table. This is such an important table, students, because the revision, whenever you get an opportunity, please stop over on this and revise this particular, the utilization of credit, the manner of utilization of the credit. Always have this habit on this particular rule. This is such an important one. So input tax credit, and I'm using it this in the initial class. You would have got the hint that in my subsequent lectures, whenever I will take it off, I will ensure that to use this particular concept regularly in my subsequent lecture. So I'm not parking this concept in the ITC topic that we learn only in ITC and let all the important topics go by, and then when ITC come towards the end, and that time we are going to apply it. That we will miss the bus, because in the examination, even in the chapter of valuation, when the question comes of calculate the GST liability, and they also ask you the manner of utilizing the credit. So everything you need to think 360 degree. So when you have to think 360 degree, these concepts, students, need to be known at the very outset, at least in the revision stage. Now you need to know about this concept, so that whenever we solve some questions thereafter further, we apply these principles while solving those questions. Otherwise it becomes meaningless exercise. So input tax credit, students, on account of, so I'll use this particular thing, and then thereafter, students, after this, output liability on account of, the first one I'm writing is of IGST. The second one, students, here, output liability on account of CGST. And the last, output liability on account of SGST. So 3 cases, students, over here. Okay. Now in this context, over here, the first one, students, input tax credit on account of what? On account of, first I'm going to write input tax credit of IGST. So I have got IGST credit. So this is the credit of IGST. So the first one, students, is what? The credit of IGST. Okay. Now students, after first line, leaves 2 lines and then write, leave 2 lines and then write, students, the credit of CGST. And the third one, students, you write the credit of SGST. Credit of SGST. So leave 2 lines and then write for point number 2, credit of CGST. Point number 3, credit of SGST. Now, first thing, students, you have the credit of IGST, and on your output side, there is a liability of IGST. Goes without saying that I am going to use this then first. Creditor of IGST to be used against the liability of IGST on my output supply. So my input supply was interstate, my output supply is also interstate. So on my input, I have the IGST credit. On my output, I have got IGST liability. So in that case, the IGST credit would be first be used to pay off my IGST liability. So this is the first in the preference. This is the first in the preference, students. That is what I'm saying in this context. The first in the preference is this then. Okay. Now say for example, I have a IGST credit, but so my input supply was interstate. My input supply was interstate. So I have the IGST credit, but my output supply is intrastate, within the state. So my output liability is CGST and SGST. My output is CGST and SGST. The question is, can I use my IGST credit to pay off my output liability of CGST and SGST? Can that be done? To that the answer is yes. Is that payment being allowed, students? Is that payment being allowed? To that the answer is yes. And that can be done in any manner, whether you want to use IGST to pay off your CGST liability first, or you want to use your IGST to pay off your SGST liability first, or in any proportion between the two. It is up to you. There is no hard and fast rule. But generally, students, we will take a particular view, because here you have to be very careful. And in the examination, you have to write a note. So in my class, when I will take you through, so we will have to take an approach that, okay, I'm using IGST to pay off my CGST first and then SGST. But that does not mean that this is the law. Even I can use first to use my IGST credit to pay off my SGST liability and then to do CGST. I can do anything. Between the two, there is no hierarchy. Whichever position that you will take in the examination, please be careful. You have to take a note on that. You don't write a note, and you will be surprised. Your 1 mark get deducted because you have not written this note. ICI will expect you to write this note. This is already there with the ICI students. You don't write this note. You've taken one approach, but there is also second approach which you could have done as per the law, and you have not written that in your notes. 1 mark is gone. This is precisely where you have to be extremely careful, students, in this context. So now, students, in this regard, just be careful on this particular part. So this is point number 2. And in this particular point number 2, you can just write below this, students, just write below this what exactly you're going to write in this regard. Please write over here for this column and this column in any order, and in any proportion, and in any proportion, in any order and in any proportion. Is that point clear to all of you, students? Now, students, be careful to a note which I am putting it to all of you over here. Be very careful about this particular note. And what is this note all about? Point number 3. The note is input tax credit of IGST to be exhausted completely, students. This is the most important note. To be exhausted completely. Can you see this one, students? To be exhausted completely. So to be exhausted mandatorily, which means this. First, write to the note one, students, over here. Input tax credit of IGST be exhausted mandatorily. Have you all written this particular point, students? About the input tax credit of IGST to be exhausted mandatorily. Tell me. And that too quickly. Input tax credit of IGST to be exhausted mandatorily. So now, students, let me give you an example. Apply your mind. This sentence is the most important sentence. And God willing, it might be there in your examination. So my input supply, students, I have got 2 input supply. One, I have taken interstate. On that, there was an IGST credit. And my second supply, input supply, was intrastate. So from that, I had the CGST and SGST credit. From that, I had a CGST and SGST credit in this context. Okay. But my output supply, students, in that context was only intrastate. One supply which I did, output supply, was only intrastate. So intrastate means my output supply has CGST and SGST. Output supply will have a liability of CGST and SGST. So what I'm going to do in this context? So I have the credit of IGST, CGST and SGST, all 3. Whereas my output liability is of CGST and SGST. So first step, always bear it in mind. You will exhaust your IGST credit first completely. You will exhaust your IGST credit completely. Even if it is to do with the liability of CGST or SGST, doesn't matter. But you will have to exhaust your IGST liability completely. That is the point in this context. Because please, you say, what is the logic behind this? Because see, this IGST is a temporary account, students. Just think like this. IGST is a temporary account. They don't want to retain this temporary account. So whichever government it has to be passed on, they will pass it on that. IGST just come because there is a temporary interest rate that has happened. But it is a temporary account. And that being a temporary thing, they just need to distribute it to the respective government. And that is the reason why they don't want to retain it. They want to distribute. So IGST is like a custodian of an amount for further distribution, for further apportionment. So they don't want to retain those amount for in the IGST account. They don't want to hold up that account. So that is the reason why, because if they hold up, because you cannot use the IGST amount. What could be used is a CGST and SGST later on. Means the government, when the government has to use their fund, they will use CGST and SGST. IGST just to retain it in that case. And that is the reason why they don't want to hold up this fund that has to be used first. And that is the reason why you just need to exhaust this completely. Is that point clear to all of you students? Now the next, that is the reason why you will do this. Now coming to this one students over here, you have the CGST credit from your input supply, and if, what are you going to do about CGST credit students? So in that particular context, can you use the CGST liability? Students, can you use the CGST liability to adjust the CGST, sorry, can you use a CGST credit to adjust the CGST liability on your output supply? Yes, you can do that. So on your output supply, if there is a CGST liability, the same can be adjusted, students. The same can be adjusted. So that is point number 4. Can you use the CGST credit? Students, can you use a CGST credit to adjust the SGST liability on the output supply? Can you use the CGST credit to adjust the SGST liability on your output supply? Answer is no, not applicable. You cannot do that. CGST credit cannot be used to pay off your SGST liability on your output supply. What about the IGST liability? So CGST credit, can that be used to pay off your IGST liability on your output supply? Answer is yes. In fact, my previous case study was only of that only. So that can also be done. So I'm writing here 5. I'm just writing here 5. Come to the SGST credit on your input. Can the SGST credit be used to pay output supply? Can the SGST credit can be used to pay the SGST liability on the output supply? Yes. Can it be used to pay the CGST liability? No. Can it be used to pay the IGST liability on the output supply? Yes, it can be. Yes, it can be. So I hope that all of you are clear with this particular proposition now. Every one of you are through with this one. Students, please be careful on this one. This is such an important particular area that has been there in this particular notes. So with that, students, we are done with this particular hierarchy, which I had to use it in my initial lectures only in this context, because as we proceed now further in the practicals, I will have to use this concept heavily now. I will have to use this concept, students, heavily now in this context. I hope that every one of you are clear with this one. All of you in this context. Fine. With that, students, I will be dealing with the last couple of concepts, and then we move on to the next topic, that is supply. So this topic would stand over from the basics point of view. You will be through with this one. So now, students, quickly, students, couple of last concept on this particular topic, and we are through. Students, one homework which is there from this topic: which GST will get subsumed, which old taxes will be subsumed. That is an inter-CA most important topic, but at least in final CA. UTGST, Abhin is asking, sir, what about UTGST? Same, what you did for in this context. For this one, the same thing would be applied. SGST. This is it. So students, all of you will take the GST compensation cess. The GST compensation cess, students. So far as the GST compensation, yes, Ashwarya, same as SGST. Same as SGST, Ashwarya. Now, friends, GST compensation, which is in page number 6. Page number 6, I'm just writing it over here. So, one small particular point which I just needed to discuss with all of you on the GST compensation. Technically speaking, they will not ask you this, but this concept I require for valuation topic. So, only for a topic on the valuation that I would be requiring this particular part. So, just writing about the GST compensation part, students, over here. So, all of you, the GST compensation cess. This is page number 6 of your notes. Now, students, as you all know, it is all on the luxury item or the demerit item, which is this pan masala, tobacco, motor cars, aerated waters. So all those are the categories, cigarettes. So obviously from these items, because the government knows the fact that people, their revenue from this sector is always on a higher side. So obviously every one of you know why this compensation cess was introduced. So that many states which will lose their revenue on account of the GST being introduced. So these states demanded the compensation. So they felt threatened with the GST being introduced. They felt threatened that what will happen to our state revenue, which we used to earn earlier from VAT and CST, that will get fundamentally reduced by introduction of the GST. So the government has introduced this concept of GST compensation cess so as to compensate for their loss of revenue. That compensation cess should have been over last year by 30th of June 2022. But now, as I told you, friends, it has been extended to 2026. That is a huge period of extension. So over here in this particular context, students, with that particular reason, what happens in this regard? This GST compensation, students, the cess which has been introduced, this is applied on charge on what, students? Is it charged only on intrastate or both? This is charged, students, on both the supply. That is both the intra as well as the interstate. So it is charged on both the supply, which both supply intra as well as interstate in this context, in this regard. So there are a couple of points that you should always be careful about this one. Secondly, this cess, students, the second point which you should always bear it in mind is the fact that whether this GST compensation cess, is it also charged in the composition levy? The composition levy, we just have discussed about it, that there is an option up to 150 lakhs of turnover or 75 lakhs of turnover, where the option can be exercised to pay the GST at a reduced rate, which is known as the composition levy. My question to all of you is that if an option of composition levy is exercised, whether the GST compensation cess, can that also be imposed on that particular levy? Whether the GST compensation cess, can that also be imposed if you have taken the option of composition levy scheme? Answer is no. Answer is no, students. So this cess not on composition levy scheme. Composition levy scheme. And the third one, students, which has been there over here in this context. Yesterday, students, we've discussed about the valuation, remember? We include for GST, when we have to charge the GST rate, students, when we have to charge the GST rate, we include the excise duty. Yesterday, the first class, we discussed that particular point. So, whether we will also include the GST compensation cess as the part of my assessable value, whether we will also include the GST compensation cess as a part of my assessable value for the purpose of calculating the GST liability, just like the way excise duty was included, whether the GST compensation cess, will that also be included as a part of my value on which the GST rate would be applied? And the answer is no. And the answer is no, students. So therefore, in this case, will not be part of value, will not be part of valuation if charged separately, students. If charged separately by the supplier. Separately by the supplier. Is that point clear to all of you now? In this context? Now there are many rates. Obviously, you don't have to remember the rate. They will give you the rate in the question. But like I remember one rate on that the pan masala or the chewing tobacco, the gutka that we say, on that pan masala chewing tobacco or gutka, on that the GST compensation rate is 200%. In fact, just slightly more than 200%. 200% is the GST compensation cess that is charged on that particular amount. Now the question therefore is how to do that. Let's say, for example, in this case, take an example of pan masala. So pan masala in this context, gutka or chewing tobacco. Rate, again I am telling you students, you don't have to remember the rate for this one. It is going to be given. So don't worry about that. Concept is important now. How do we use it? So if supposingly yesterday students we did, so in all, be careful students, you will do this 4 case study. So 4 case study from this topic. Please tell me, which are the 4 case study from this topic that you are going to do? 4 case study that we are talking about it. 3 case study done yesterday and this is the 4th one. So 4 case study, article 279A, that is it. 4 case study, right in the first page from basic concept. 4 case study, 3 plus 1. So 3 yesterday and 1 today. That is what we are doing it right now. And article 279A. Is that one clear to all of you? Fine. So basics selling price, students, say for example it is 100. I'm talking about the gutka, Neeraj. Excise duty. Any case, rates are not important over here. Excise duty. Now please tell me, this is a tobacco and tobacco product. So on tobacco and tobacco product, whether excise duty can that be charged? On tobacco and tobacco product, whether the excise duty can that be charged? And yesterday we have seen that, and today also we have revised it. Answer is yes. So along with the GST, excise duty will also be charged. So see over here it is 10%. 10% will become 10 in this context. So now aggregate I will take 110. Now you can see why I have marked this case study for you. 4 case study from this first topic. The first 2 class 4 case study is already been captured. So 110 is the amount over here in this context. Now over here students, there will be CGST. Say it is intrastate within the same state. CGST, and we know what is the maximum CGST that can be charged? Maximum CGST rate? Because it is gutka, chewing tobacco, let us penalize it badly. And I say from 20%. High GST maximum. %40. Again, any case, rates will be irrelevant students for all of you. Rates, any case, students, they are going to give it to you. This particular point. Maximum in this regard. So just consider this particular part, students. So here it is in this context. 22, 22, 22 and 22. Take the subtotal. 154. Now the GST compensation cess, students. GST compensation cess. And that is say at 200%. 200% of what? Remember students, income tax also we have got HEC. Income tax students also we have got an HEC. The income tax HEC students is applied on income tax HEC is applied on what? That income tax HEC, students, is applied on income tax amount. That is applied on what? On the income tax amount. So, in the same way, whether the GST cess, compensation cess, will that also be applied? Students, will that also be applied? Applied on what? On the GST charge? Will that also be applied on GST charge? So if it is 44 GST in totality, so can I say GST compensation cess becomes 88? Can I say the GST compensation will become 88 because 22, 22, 44? So in all, it becomes 88. Can we say that, students? And the answer is no. Here the GST compensation is at the same value on which the GST is charged. So on the same value on which the GST is charged. So therefore, the GST was charged on which value? On 110. So therefore, 200%, 200% students on 110 is what it would be. So my GST compensation cess would become how much? 220. Can you see that, students? This is the impact, and the total amount you can see for yourself becomes 3. These items, which are the demerit item, students, they have become very expensive. What do you think? These demerit item, students, has become very expensive. Poor people, this has become beyond the reach of poor people. But do you think that the consumption has gone down? These items? And the answer is no. Consumption has remained the same in this context. So it's like a beg, borrow, steal. Still, they are consuming these items. Anyway, so that is primarily the point, students, over here. We have done with this particular proposition, students. With that, now, students, I enter into, in this regard, students. Shall we start now, students, in this context, the supply? Or will you revise this particular part and we start supply tomorrow? It's up to you, students. Or we'll start at least something on supply, students, in this regard. Students, at least one note I just want you all to write. So that a chart. Prepare in your notebook, students. The chart that you will prepare, students, in your notebook. Supply. This is an important one, students. You will have a basic framework. So, students, please give the heading in this regard. The supply particular part. Now, as you know, students, supply is a taxable event. Whether it is a IGST or CGST or SGST, supply happens to be the taxable event. Do you all agree? Do you all agree, students? Supply is a taxable event. Where this has been defined, the definition has been given, a scope of supply, where it has been given, students. Now this section needs to be remembered, students. See, there are multiple places, some like definitions and all. Section you need not remember it. Section 2 is sufficient enough. But section needs to be remembered, students. You just keep that thing in mind. From here onwards, our section journey will begin. So sections needs to be remembered. We will revise the sections towards the end also. I will have a multiple revision slot on the section part itself so that these get registered in your mind. But please be competitive, huh? Students, I'm telling you, we are not here only to understand GST. We are here to score in GST or on IDT paper. So the entire aim that you people are putting in effort, I am putting in effort, is just not to understand the GST and be happy about it. Where the entire focus is to how do we score good marks, and we see through the entire group or see through my entire both the groups, through the aggregate or whatever you have to say, and qualify as a chartered accountant. So some that extra effort, I'm telling you, students, many students, see, out of the last batch also, students, or any particular students which we see, many particular lot students, any case, they have got a lot of hard work to do because the scoring is very poor, 20, 25, 30 marks in a subject. So that requires a bit of a hard work. Many students, and I'm telling you, this lot of failure is more than 60%. Out of the total failure lot, say 100 students have failed, more than 60 or maybe 70% primary, they failed because they just have not put that extra effort which was required on their part to clear their examination. That extra effort was required because they are stuck in those 40s or 40, 41, 42, 43. That is the kind of the marks that they get it, and that keeps repeating attempt after attempt in this context. And what happens towards the end of it? Aggregate is not happening in this regard. And this story is, in fact, now I'm students, believe me, I'm teaching the CA students from 2004 in this context. From that particular period, 20 years, probably in this case, you can just imagine how many students have seen through in this particular journey. And I've seen this is the ratio which I'm telling you, students. 70% of students are just because of in this range. That extra was what is required in that case, and that is what, students, you will have to push for that extra 10-20% and just push yourself to that. This time you have to push it because number 24 is the attempt. I told you in the first class also. Second attempt will not be the criteria now. This is the attempt wherein ICI will have bit of liberty or luxury to clear the backlog. And therefore, this is the time wherein your extra effort will be required, students. You need to stay grounded and stay committed. Section is something very critical. Section 7, here, students, section 7 of CGST. Because many of the students, CGST Act. Because many students are also confused with CGST and IGST. Don't worry, IGST only few sections has to be remembered. And that you will remember it in the process without putting much on effort. The IGST section will be remembered by you. So first concept, students, would be supply. That is what we are going to discuss. After supply is over, students, we need to understand the categories of supply. This is very important. The categories of supply. Now this category of supply, students, which has been there, this category, we will divide it into two parts. The category of supply, students, we will divide it into two parts. You will just say which two parts? Based on jurisdiction. Based on jurisdiction. So based on jurisdiction, students, the category of supply which I'm getting it over here are the interstate and intrastate. Interstate and intrastate. So one is the interstate, another is the intrastate supply in this context. As far as the interstate is concerned, students, this is about section number 7 of IGST Act. Section number 7 of the IGST Act. And so far as the intrastate is concerned, you'll just say intrastate, but that definition of intra or the scope of intra is given in section 8 of IGST Act, not in CGST and all. So that scope of that intra and inter is provided in the IGST Act. Can you see this one? So this is based on GST, the category of, based on jurisdiction, the category of supply can be divided either as intrastate or it could be divided as interstate. Is that point clear? Interstate section 7 of IGST and intrastate section 8 of IGST. Students, one more request, just to ensure to push to your friends primarily this lectures, because this lectures will definitely and tremendously will help primarily to them as well. And in fact, their particular or their parents' blessing also primarily you will be signatory of that one, because this is an important stage for many of the students in this context. Now, based on taxability, now supply based on taxability, if you see, students, based on the taxability, be careful. Supply based on taxability. What is the supply based on taxability? One is a taxable supply and another is a non-taxable supply. Non-taxable supply. And non-taxable supply, students, you be very careful. Refer this as case of a non-GST supply. Refer this case as what? Non-GST supply, students. This would be referred as non-GST supply. Can you give me the example of non-taxable supply? Any one of you are aware of any non-taxable supply that you may be aware of it, that you may have read earlier or known earlier? Example of a non-taxable supply or the non-GST supply, as the case may be, students. Quickly. Hey students, the non-taxable supply or the non-GST supply could be in a position in this regard. Indeed, Rishi, Tulsi, alcoholic liquor, student, for human consumption in this regard. Students, tell me one thing in this context. What about that 5 petroleum product? 5 petroleum product. Can that also be referred as a non-taxable supply at this particular point? 5 petroleum product, can that be also referred as a non-taxable in this case? And the answer is yes. Why? Because the charge is postponed. There is no levy. There is no levy at this stage. So till the time the levy or the charge is postponed, those 5 product, those 5 petroleum product will be referred as a non-taxable supply. Till the time the levy is postponed. So therefore, in that context, students, the 5 petro product in this particular context will also fall under this category of non-taxable supply till the time this is there. So can I say non-taxable supply is that supply on which there is no levy? Can we say a non-taxable supply? Please write the sentence now. What is the conclusion? Conclusion therefore is non-taxable supply. What is the net result? NTS. NTS is that supply. NTS is that supply on which there is no levy. There is no levy or charge. There is no levy or charge. And this is in fact the definition itself. This is the definition itself. So through example, I made you remember the definition. Have you completed up till here, students? All of you? Have you all noted up till here? So first we will understand the entire supply concept. And then we enter into what is intrastate supply, the categorization. And this category of taxable and non-taxable supply. So what is taxable supply, students? What is taxable supply? Now can you give the definition? It is defined. Huh? I'm making you to draft the definition without looking into the definition. Did you realize that? You are right now drafting the definition, students, at this stage. So what is taxable supply in that regard? How are you going to write your answer? Taxable supply are those supply which is subject to the charge or the levy of GST. Are those supply which are subject to what? Subject to the charge or levy of GST. Can we say that, students? Can we say that? Fine. Okay. After this, students, be careful. After this, students, in this regard, once you cross the threshold, once the threshold of chargeability is cross, then there are two more supply to be considered to determine the liability under GST. There are two more supply to be considered to determine the liability under GST. Now you have to tell me which are those two supply which I'm talking about. After this, read the sentence carefully, and this is the last concept, students. You only have to tell me, students, in this case. This is the last concept. You only have to tell me, students, in this particular concept. You only have to tell me, students. Tell me quickly, what is it you're waiting for? In this context, this would be, students, after this would be the exempt supply. Indeed. And the non-exempt supply. Zero rate, students, I'll take it separately because zero rate is a very fine concept now. Yes, there is another supply known as a zero rate supply. But I don't want to introduce zero rate here. Just we are doing a comparison because there is no opposite thing of zero rate. There is nothing which is an opposite of the zero rate, students. And this is a non-exempt supply in this context. This is a non-exempt supply. And only in respect of this, students, that there is a liability pay GST. Question therefore is, what is exempt supply? Anyone who can answer it in this context? What is exempt supply in this context? Any idea, students? So here it means and it includes. Just last, students, you are writing it over here. It means and it includes. Exempt supply means and exempt supply includes. You see what it means and what it includes, isn't it? That exactly is the point. So it means two things. One, exempt supply means over here, it means nil rated supply. And the second one, students, is the wholly exempt supply. Wholly exempt. So if there is a partial exemption, students, students, there is a partial exemption also. There is partial exemption also. So that partial exemption can never be considered to be an exempt supply. It will come under the non-exempt supply. So if you have to consider a supply to be a wholly exempt if a supply is a wholly exempt supply, that it will go under the definition of exempt supply. Now, the exempt supply includes something more. The exempt supply, students, it includes something more. You'll say, so what is it something more? In this case, it includes the non-taxable supply, student. See that. This is the magic. Non-taxable supply. You say, sir, but non-taxable supply has gone above taxable, non-taxable. And there we said that non-taxable supply means a supply on which there is no levy. Yes, that is true. There is no levy. But the exempted supply definition, they have expanded the scope to even include the non-taxable supply. You'll say, what is the logic behind that? The reason I'll let you know, students, not right. This could not be the right time, students. you need to wait for the topic like ITC and all. That stage, this why in exempt supply they have included the definition of non-taxable supply. That logic would get clear later on, but for the time being, you just take a note of it and just revise this in this regard. Zero rated, I'm not using it because there is no opposite part which we can see over here. Now, students, tomorrow lecture we have to do supply, and please take it from me, friends. Please pay attention what I'm saying. Can you see this one? I've told you to read homework 1.12 to 1.16. Please pay attention what I'm saying in last 2 minutes before we wind up today's session now. Students, this is such an important topic on supply. And I'm telling you, the point happens like this. This topic you need to revise 10 times. 10 times you need to revise. You just why 10 times? And at different point of time you have to revise. Why different point of time? One time when you are blank. So assuming that you are blank right now, you'll revise supply. Assuming we are saying that students are just starting GST. Or assuming you are a very advanced student, you will revise supply. Because I can tell you, a student who understand for the very first time supply and a student who will understand the supply, the same concept of supply after reading 5 times is different. In fact, after reading 10 times, if you read this supply definition, the understanding will be different. And I'm telling you very important thing, students, in this case, because I'm telling you why I'm saying so. Students, why I'm saying so? Because in your answers, you get confused. You check, you don't know the question is targeting consideration. Supply definition, the first concept, supply for consideration. And you are not even aware that you have to write about the consideration in this case. And you are writing meaningless stuff. You are writing section 7. You are writing on supply, but you are not using the right reference, right term which are used in the scope to explain your answer, and that is the reason why you get 0 marks. Therefore, this topic requires microscopic, not microscopic, but frequent revision. Therefore, today I am telling you, do it now, primary. Tomorrow we will do it. Thereafter, after we are done with it, you will have to revise it again. That is the layer in which you will revise it. And obviously, in the next month or the month of October, a day before examination, you are going to revise this concept. So, any case, 5-6 times you have captured this particular concept of supply, and that is how you're going to settle down with this particular concept. This is such an important stage that I've told you about it. Is that point clear to all of you? Now, students, please, a request to all of you, do share the information about this particular batch to all the friends that is there to your knowledge. That is the only humble request from my side to all of you. Okay, because we are at the initial stage, let the students take the advantage of the live lectures more in that context. So that is the reason. Because what happens generally when the recorded lectures are there, yes, they do it, but it becomes difficult for many of the students to handle the recorded lectures at that. Okay, so at this start of the batch, since we are in, do promote the session as much as possible so that many students can take the advantage. If you feel it's all worth it, then do share it. Okay, so students, I'll see you then tomorrow. Please read and sit for the tomorrow session. I'm going to tell you in the Telegram channel also, just to give a reminder tomorrow. Read this 1.12 to 1.16. Okay, just be there and be ready for the tomorrow session on this one. And those who are yet to join the Telegram channel, you have got the first number in the in the description box. You do the WhatsApp to me, I'll take you to the Telegram channel. Okay, that's where the entire link and the PDF of the lectures are being put up. See you then, students. Then good night to all of you. Take care.